Um, we are talking today with our guest, this panel, on how to build a powerhouse consumer brand. And I had a chance to spend a few minutes with all the panelists this morning, and I got to tell you, this really is going to be a powerhouse. We've assembled over a century of experience on the topic, and I've got to apologize because there is no adequate introduction for the people who are sitting on the stage today, and in the interest of getting started, I'm going to have to abbreviate my introductions, and I want to begin with our host on the far end, Stephen H. Gordon, founding chairman, CEO, and president of Opus Bank. Stephen, thank you. Stephen has built a powerhouse from an idea on paper just 5 years ago to among one of the fastest growing banks in the Western region and in the United States, based on the belief, and I love this, that the banking system was broken and that we needed to take banking forward by taking it back to a time when banks respected their clients and clients respected their bank. That's a good state of being. Stephen was an investment banker in New York, where he was a partner with Sandler O'Neill, specializing in advising management and directors of underperforming, undercapitalized, and troubled financial institutions. And today his banker's passion is being a partner for growth, providing both growth capital and advisory services to successful entrepreneurs and business leaders up and down the West Coast and throughout the United States. Our guest, seated next to Stephen, Mike Golub, who doesn't know Mike, the president of business for the Portland Timbers. Mike joined the Timbers in 2009 and helped lead the organization during its highly successful launch to Major League Soccer. He has indelibly changed the landscape of sports in Portland, as you know, creating a national success story, really, and a model for professional sports nationwide. If you've ever tried to get a ticket, the Timbers sell out all of their regular season games, and the season ticket waiting list is now more than 12,000 people. Isn't that amazing? Mike was previously COO for the Trailblazers, reshaping the team's brand into one of the most successful in professional sports. Mike was formerly with Nike, and he was a founding member of Nike Sports Entertainment. We're proud to have you here today, Mike. Thank you for joining us. David Howitt, founder and CEO, yes, you are there, of the Merriweather Group. David is an entrepreneur and an innovator, and his firm is an advisor providing Fortune 100 companies and startups with exactly what they need to grow and build a powerhouse consumer brand. Time-tested business strategy and the mentorship and sage wisdom of both financial and legal counsel. David's experience working with iconic consumer brands started in his role as a corporate counsel for Adidas. He told me earlier this morning he's a recovering attorney. I am as well, so we shared that in common. And here in Portland, they have mentored well-known brands like Dave's Killer Bread. Who doesn't know that? They used to be on the West Coast, and then you guys will remember they moved to the Midwest, and then to Canada, and then to the East Coast, and now they're all over North America. Their other clients are nationwide as well, including AT&T, Pendleton, ABC Carpets, and one of my favorite brands, Stumptown Coffee. Welcome, Dave. Thank you. And Scott Hendrickson with Next Level, a great name for this firm. If you don't know them, there's a little kiosk there in the back. It's an awesome business concept. Next Level provides immediate access to executive and C-level talent. It's something that I think is really needed today. Private equity firms call on Next Level for interim or project leadership to enhance performance of their portfolio companies. And clients are able to access proven executive and board talent in the face of a merger or acquisition, international expansion, or temporary placement of C-level execs. Scott is personally accredited, I thought this was remarkable, with over $250 million in revenue growth of his clients. and he hails from well-known brands like Corning and General Mills, and today he serves as Senior Vice President of Sales and Marketing for Next Level, and we're grateful to have him here today. Please welcome Scott. We also want to welcome Jeffrey Newman, President and CEO of Boyd's Coffee. Many of you know Boyd's Coffee, the oldest family-owned coffee company in the Pacific Northwest. And now their span reaches the continental United States. Boyd Coffee was established in 1900 right here in Portland. And talk about endurance and leadership, and not only surviving but expanding in the light of incredible global competition, and they have. Jeffrey has over a quarter of a century of experience in the food service industry, and we're delighted he was able to join today's panel. Welcome, Jeffrey. Thank you. Finally, I just want to welcome our co-sponsors this morning, Stoll Reeves Law Firm. We have representatives of Stoll Reeves here this morning. Thank you very much. Talk about a great brand. Established in 1907, this firm has nearly 400 attorneys operating in 7 states. And Stoll Reeves achieved last year 34 prestigious national tier rankings. Scores of their lawyers have been ranked among the best in the region. 22 of their legal team were ranked among 2016 Lawyers of the Year in the regions where they operate. Thank you very much for sponsoring this morning's breakfast. We appreciate that. And Next Level is also a co-sponsor this morning. Thank you, Scott, for that. And now, to begin our journey as we explore how to build a powerhouse brand, I'll turn the panel over to Opus Bank's CEO, Stephen Gordon.
Thank you. So is there an echo or are we good? All right. So first I want to thank everybody for joining us here today. This should be a lot of fun and very interesting. And as we head towards the latter part of this event, we're going to want to see if we can turn this into a little bit of interactive dialogue. So as we go along, please hold your questions if you have, but know that you're going to have the opportunity to ask them, and hopefully we don't have blank stares at the end and we actually make this interesting. Now, I do want to also say that, that when I saw the topic for today, how to build a brand and communicate a brand, my thought was that there's absolutely probably no one better to moderate this than Brad Davis, our Chief Marketing Officer, who speaks around the world actually on building a brand. And I promised him, and we were just joking around about it a little while ago, that even though I'm known to periodically call an audible about 2 minutes before I take the stage and say, hey, Brad, why don't you run with this one today, that I wouldn't do that to Brad today. So why don't we get started? So I'm going to open this up to all the panelists. To kick off our discussion this morning, I want to toss out the first question to the group as a whole, and anyone's free to jump in and answer. What do you see as some of the key attributes that drive the success of a consumer brand?
Want me to jump in? Well, good morning, everyone. Thank you for attending, and thank you guys for putting this together. Just a quick shout out to Opus. I had an opportunity to learn a bit more about them this morning, and I think I'll answer the question by maybe referencing the conversation. A great brand is a promise kept, period. It's a promise kept. Great brands make a promise to the consumer, to the community, and then they keep that promise over and over and over again in every touch point and in every way that they interact with their consumers in the community. And when you do that long enough, you become a brand. And you differentiate yourself from any commodity. And it stops being about price. And it starts to become about emotional connection. It starts to be about experiences. And it starts to be about relationships that you have with your brands. Nike and Adidas often use the same factories, many of the same materials, yet people will make a big deal about supporting one or the other. And why is that? Because the brands speak to slightly different things, and those promises and things will resonate with certain consumers stronger than with others. In learning about Opus this morning, I was taken by this notion, and I agree, that to a large extent the banking industry is broken. It's about transactions, and it's not about relationships, and it's not about the journey. And what these guys are doing is bringing back, frankly, what was an old-fashioned way of doing business, and that is about understanding who their consumer is deeply, what their needs are, and then serving them. And that's what great brands do. I'll just finish my comment by saying in the audience, and he'll be mad at me for calling him out, is someone that I have deep love and respect for, Dave Dahl, the founder of Dave's Killer Bread. And to me, you don't need to look any further than that to understand a great brand. That brand was born from heart. It was born from a desire to put great bread in as many people's mouths as possible. That's what fueled the fire. That's what created the entire product line, the entire go-to-market strategy. And as a result, we, the consumer, feel that. Pun intended, the bread category was stale. There was brown bread and white bread, and a lot of it. And as consumers, we didn't have a relevant choice. We didn't have something that could be fun, irreverent, delicious, sustainable, organic, and have an important and authentic message about redemption and about being a human. And Dave fixed that problem. And when you fix a problem and you do it from your heart, a business can go from the farmer's market to where Dave's Killer Bread is now. That's what a brand is.
Add to it?
Yep, thank you, Stephen. Thank you, David. No accident that we pointed to you first, I think. To go along, I think, with David's comment that a brand is a promise kept, part of our challenge as a 115-year-old company when we thought about who we are and what we're about is that we had to really get real. And for us, the brand then became the essence of authenticity, integrity, I think right back to your promise kept, and being genuine. It was interesting when I joined the company, one of our challenges was that we talked as if we were a brand that only appealed to white tablecloth restaurants. And indeed, that was about 3% of our revenue stream. What we really were was a coffee company that provided a great coffee experience to anyone that wanted to have a great coffee experience wherever they wanted to have it. So we decided to own that piece. And we felt it played to our heritage, how genuine we had been, that coffee was fuel to a great day's aspiration. It was a reward for good work done well, working hard, and we decided not to ever try to be a half-cap soy-infused latte. That was not who we were. We were a cup of black coffee. So we had to change our culture internally to really own who we were and what our DNA was about. So we came up with phrases and black and white posters internally because we had to start with our own team and I think our own family first. So we came up with sayings like, Boyd's is fuel, not fashion. Boyd's is leather. Boyd's is analog. Boyd's is raw power. To get set for that first part, which was to be able to keep our promise to everyone that we interacted with, and to do that with every ambassador within the organization, which was all 300 of our team members. But if they didn't feel that, or own it, or portray it, it would be the most disingenuous thing that we could do with our brand as we sought to, I think, reestablish what was, I think, an underrated kind of iconic fixture within the Pacific Northwest. So I think to dovetail on that, for us it became being really genuine, truthful, maintaining the integrity in everything that you do, because no matter what packaging you come up with, no matter what catchphrase you have, if you don't really own it and believe it in the soul of who you are, it's really difficult to establish something that's false anywhere you decide to take it.
So interesting. I, as a financial institution in a broken industry, transactionally driven as an industry overall, and am I trying to change that and going back to there's got to be something that's much more important than just the transaction? or in this case, there's got to be something that's more important than the price of the cup of coffee.
Yeah.
You know, and you just brought up the concept that it's not about price. Talk about branding and the importance of it versus price. I always say that if it's about price, I'm out.
You know, I'll take a crack at it. First of all, I really like these chairs. I feel like they're nice. I feel like I need a white,
Wonder what the brand
big
is.
white cat in a pipe. And, you know, in the world of sports, we're a luxury brand, right? We're if you need cable TV, if you need natural gas, if you need electricity in your house, you don't have a choice. Hopefully, it's a good experience. Hopefully, they deliver on their promise. But we're competing in the world of disposable time, disposable income, and so it's a very sacred covenant. And people decide to attend Timbers games from here and not from here, and it's a sacred bond. And we're not price sensitive. It's about the experience, about the community within the community. And if you ask people, you know, what are their variables in determining their experience with Timbers? Price is very low on the list. Yeah.
All right, so can the brand experience itself become more important and impactful than the product or products the brand represents? And what's an example of where you've seen that happen, Mike?
You know, I think we all agree that a brand is defined by the aggregate experience at every touch point, the entire consumer cycle. And so if any one of those variables is either misaligned or disproportionate or just plain out of whack, you're going to have problems. So perhaps a recent example is Chrysler. Chrysler decided they needed to appeal to a younger demographic. They were skewing too old. The products weren't resonating with younger people. How do we change that? So they hired M&M and they created these cool, hip, slick spots that they bought Super Bowl time, and yet the rest of the consumer experience didn't match that, you know, what they were portraying in the ad. So if you go to a Chrysler dealership, it's a total disconnect to what the M&M commercial you're seeing in the Super Bowl. And if you jump into a Chrysler car, it's not authentic to what they're trying to portray in their advertising. And so it's a great example of a disconnect. Whereas, take Mini, which I think is a really cool brand. You go into a Mini showroom, go to the Mini showroom here in town, it's freaking cool. You walk in and it's totally consistent with the product and the perception of the product and what they're portraying. So I think, you know, it's a complex equation and it's different for different brands. But if, you know, in our case, people might be drawn to the experience. I hear a Timbers game is cool. I hear it's great at Providence Park. But if the team sucks, consistently, and beer is warm, and the bathroom lines are onerous, people aren't going to come back. And so I think there are different parts of the experience that draw people, and hopefully you get them on the continuum. But if any of those are out of whack, if the overall experience isn't consistent and authentic, then a brand's in trouble.
Maybe I'll just share a quick comment on that because I want to underscore that and illustrate it with an example. So the power of a brand versus maybe the importance of the product. I totally agree with Mike that the product has to work. It has to show up. It has to deliver on the promise. But for Oregon Chai, the company that my wife envisioned and that we started and grew, we had an interesting kind of happenstance. So we were a real company at this point, and we got a phone call from Starbucks, and apologize to anyone in the audience who might work for Starbucks as it relates to this story. And they said, we'd like to come down and talk with you about buying your company. And we said, well, you know, we're open to a dialogue. We're not for sale, but we're happy to meet. So they had their head M&A guy come down, and we met at our lawyer's office, and he said, I'm authorized to make an offer to buy your company, and it's subject to due diligence, but here's the offer. And we were in our early 30s, it was a big number. And before I could even finish reading the document, my amazing, crazy hippie wife said, oh, that's super cool of you, but we're just not interested. And I said, well, do you want to caucus in the hall for a second? And she was like, yeah, no, we're just having too much fun, and we're enjoying this journey, and we're not interested. So the guy looked at us and said, okay, let me just be very blunt and honest. We're going to buy another chai company. We're going to reverse engineer your product. we're going to get real close because, as the lawyers from Stoll Reeves will tell you, it's pretty difficult to protect something like tea, honey, water, and spices. And we're going to outmarket you 3,000 to 1, and we're going to out-distribute you 10,000 to 1, and you guys are going to be out of business in 6 months. And don't say big bag Starbucks because we've made a nice offer and you're not even open to negotiating it. And my wife said, I really appreciate your honesty. I wish you the best of luck, and sorry to waste your time driving down from Seattle. And we got in our used Subaru and we're driving home. I think I had diarrhea, and they did exactly—
From the chai?
Not from the chai, from the conversation. And I think, so they did exactly what they said they would do. They bought Tazo, owned by good friends of ours, and they launched a Tazo chai, and they went for it with their marketing spend and their distribution. And our sales doubled and doubled and doubled and doubled. And 4 years later, we sold it for 7.5 times the offer they had made us. And we got a letter from that person, which I have framed, and it said it was the single biggest lesson he learned in his experience as a M&A professional and as a brand builder, that you can't quote R&D authenticity in a lab. That the consumer sniffs it out, the consumer was educated about the category by Starbucks, and then chose to buy our product because we were the authentic brand. We were the first mover, the category creator, the innovator, the heart and soul. And it didn't matter that Starbucks was a dime cheaper and or outmarketed us or outdistributed us. The consumer wanted to support with their dollars the company that they felt a connection to and a relationship with. That's the power of a brand.
So Jeff, established in 1900 here in Portland, Boyd's is one of the oldest family-owned coffee companies in the world and has a long-standing history of providing customers with excellent products. But from what I know of your brand, innovation is part of your DNA. What does innovation mean to you and Boyd's, and how has innovation enabled you to keep the brand fresh?
Great question, Stephen. Thank you. So innovation, I'm sure everybody has their own interpretation of that, and it may be better than mine. But what we've learned, I think, as an institution, and certainly myself as an individual, is that if you are not constantly moving in this global economy, you will be overtaken. So innovation really is life. And as we sought to define the essence and DNA of our company, and looking back, so we went back to find out what was really true and genuine about our organization, starting with our founder, P.D. Boyd, a little micro roaster right here in Portland in 1900, was that he innovated. He went from a horse and buggy to a Model A and delivered coffee to people rather than have them come and pick it up. He was the first to loan equipment to a restaurant that they could brew his coffee through. And throughout our history, we found that we've constantly done different things within our industry to stay pertinent and to create value for our customers. We had this dialogue internally that said, it went something like this: look, gosh, we founded in 1900, we've made it through the First World War, the Great Flu epidemic, the Great Depression, the Second World War, Korean War, countless economic cycles. We prospered through the Carter administration, Summer of Love, all these different things. And throughout that time, what have we done that was different? And what did we do to make us pertinent as a company to survive, let alone prosper? And what we learned is that one of our early founders developed what was called a flavor flow in 1964, which is essentially what you'll see in a fine coffee shop, which is a pour over, the hot water over the raw grounds to make an exceptional cup of coffee. And we pioneered that in 1964, the air pot brewer, which, because we had poor legal counsel, never patented that, so it was a gift to the industry. But you will see air pots that you dispense globally. That was developed by David Boyd. We were the first company, not just with equipment or product, to have a female coffee buyer. That may sound strange in today's age, but in 1957, it was a really big deal to appoint Vita Younger within Boyd's as a coffee buyer and to have a global reputation. That was hugely innovative. Most recently, I think, I think one of the first coffee roasters to do organic coffee in the United States, Rainforest Alliance. And most recently, we've decided to launch something really unique to keep us pertinent and to keep our manifesto about our best days being in front of us, not behind us, and to constantly seek to raise the bar to create value for our strategic suppliers and our strategic customers. So we're going to launch a 100% compostable coffee pod that makes an exceptional cup of coffee for a single-serve brewer. It'll be the first 100% compostable product, all organic, Rainforest Alliance in the United States. So we're really excited about that. But that notion of having innovation in our DNA is probably more important to us now, being forward-looking, than it has been for what I think has gotten us to this point and given us the opportunity to be more viable tomorrow than we are today, to serve our customers better tomorrow than today, and I think help create value along the way. Long answer.
No, but I want everyone to really appreciate the importance of differentiating and creating a brand here, because I think about this constantly because we get approached at Opus, and it's almost like these Shark Tank moments where someone will come in with their bottle of a liquid, or a liquid that they make, that they put in a bottle, that goes into a truck, that gets shipped over to a shelf somewhere and gets sold. And I constantly wonder, what is the barrier of entry of somebody else coming in? When you think about the water industry, bottled water, and it's water in a plastic bottle, right? And the only difference between one and another is the spring they claim they got the water from, versus then add on to that this plastic bottle looks a little bit cooler than that plastic bottle. And I want everyone to realize the pain that you go through to differentiate on a cup of coffee, or to differentiate on that Tazo tea. And I think back to, anyone watch Larry David, Curb Your Enthusiasm?
Yeah.
And that one show where he goes to the counter, and I'll have one of those mocha frappa bullshit things.
Yeah.
And then he says, what do you recommend? And the guy says, how about a latte? And then he pays like, $6, $7 for a latte, tastes it, says it's great, and then he yells out, what is it? The guy goes, coffee and milk.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. So the branding behind this, it takes a lot of thought, it takes a lot of effort, and then you've got to stay ahead of the next guy who thinks they're going to be able to innovate and create something authentic right behind you. And that's not easily done. Scott, speaking of innovation, product innovation is such an important aspect and another platform for shaping and building great brands. Do you have any other insights or stories, success stories you can share?
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Stephen. And I really appreciate Jeff's comments around innovation too, and particularly underscoring that innovation really does need to be in the DNA of all of our companies. I mean, it really starts there. What I'd like to add to that is, and what I like to talk about is just the focus on the consumer and how important consumer insights are in driving the innovation process. And it's too easy to get internally focused, and we create a new feature, a new technology, and we're very internally we're trying to take this to the market. And I spent a number of years with Coleman, the outdoor company. And when I got there, it was remarkable that we had actually a brand that had been around since 1900, also like Boyd's, iconic outdoor brand, tremendous R&D capabilities, product development capabilities, distribution in the marketplace, but very limited focus on the consumer. And you'd ask the teams, I'd ask, how do you bring new ideas into the company? How do we want to think about this? And literally, somebody said, well, we watch our competitors, and then we just try to do what they're doing or do it a little bit better. And after I got rid of that person, we committed to just having this laser focus on the outdoor consumer. And we sent our product development and marketing teams around the world to camp and observe consumers camping and participate. And believe it or not, Wichita, Kansas, where our headquarters was, is not exactly the outdoor mecca of the center of the universe. And so I wanted people to get out from Santiago, Chile, to France, to Japan, to New York, to Southern California. We sent people out to play outside. And how are we going to be an authentic outdoor brand? If internally we don't even understand it. And it was really a game changer of the growth that we drove, getting really, really focused on the consumer and letting the consumer drive all aspects of that innovation stream, to how we approached our customers, to how we went to market. It was a game changer. And that was really one of the pillars of that focus on the consumer.
David, a high perceived brand value is important when you're looking to buy a company, or on the flip side, sell yours. What can you do to increase brand value and make your company more attractive for an acquisition?
Yep. So we're super fortunate at the Merriweather Group, and our clients, many of whom are here and our friends, are the epitome of building enterprise value that far exceeds just a multiple of your net profit or a multiple of your EBITDA. And what we're finding in the market more now than ever, and it's our sense and clear sense that this is going to continue, is that large companies are having a very hard time staying relevant with the consumer. And you see flat growth year on year on year. And so these larger companies are having to use the cash they have on their balance sheets, which isn't earning very much, to go out and
Why'd you
acquire.
look at me?
Because you're the banker that pays the interest. But you're not the Fed. But they're out buying up brands that are growing. And they're paying really high multiples for those brands. And they're paying those multiples because these brands that many of whom we work with and are in the room have done special things to really build fanatical relationship with their key consumers that go beyond just their financials. And so some of those tools and some of those things that we look for are, firstly, are you disruptive? And we define disruptive as either creating a new category where one has never existed. Chai was not a category. Or two, looking at categories that are tired and stale, where the consumer has been deprived of innovation and or a relevant choice, and fixing that. So, as mentioned, Dave's Killer Breads looked at a tired and stale category, and Dave fixed that. When you disrupt the status quo, you build enterprise value. You create a new way of interacting with the consumer. You solve a problem in the market. That's what capitalism is about. I don't think the world needs another running shoe or t-shirt or tea bag. If you're not doing something that actually changes the game, you really need to question why you're doing it. So either through innovation, through understanding the consumer and finding the gaps where the consumer has been deprived of a relationship or innovation or an experience, you got to start with disruption. The second thing is you got to have authenticity. And that is something that is in the DNA of the company. R&D and authenticity doesn't work. The consumer more now than ever is educated and has the ability to dig deep and to understand the inner workings of a company. So the company's mission and vision and heart and soul, often which is grounded by the founder, it's really critical to make that sacrosanct and to really, really build that into the entire go-to-market strategy. And then the third and final thing that we see as a big driver of enterprise value is the company should really be more concerned with sharing experiences than it should be with selling products. The best brands invite the consumer to have an experience with them, and then, oh, by the way, drink our wine to have that experience, or eat our amazing, delicious food to have that experience. So the consumer wants to interact with, participate with, and experience the products that they love. And if you invite them to do that with you, you will increase your enterprise value and be a target for acquisition at a high multiple.
Let's stay here for a second. and go very off script, because you said something that resonated, because I question behind all of that has to be great leadership and great visionary, because you mentioned the company that's struggling to grow, that's stagnating, and then they go and they try to buy a great company.
Yep.
Right? And there's a reason why the first company was stagnating, and it's probably the guy.
Yep.
Right? And now he thinks that he's going to go buy a great company, and they're going to get one of us to back him in doing that. And I'm going to pause. Yep. I'm going to hesitate in backing that guy, even though it's a great company he's going to be buying. Go with that a little bit.
Yeah, it's a great one. And, you know, we see this, and it certainly has happened where you see big companies acquire these amazing, agile, disruptive businesses, and then the very thing they bought, they kill.
They wreck.
They destroy. They wreck. I mean,
And they've already proven they can consistently do that very well.
they have proven that. And in all industries.
And they want to convince us now it's going to be different.
It'll be different,
Right.
right? And it's a good conversation I'd love to have. I mean, even in the financial services business, there were merchant banks, and they were successful and amazing, and they got bought up by the large international financial institutions, and the very thing they were buying, they destroyed. The beautiful thing about capitalism is it then gives rise to the next. So I'll give you an example. Stumptown Coffee was acquired. There's a lot of people in this town that will now say, oh, Stumptown's corporate. They've sold out. Dave's Killer Breads was acquired by a very large company. There are people that will question whether the integrity of what Dave built will continue or be, you know, held as an important element of the brand. If those things are not handled well, then it gives rise to the next entrepreneur who will come in and say, I'm Water Avenue Coffee, and I'm going to go fill the void that now has been created by the acquisition of Stumptown. Or I'm Next Startup Chai Company, or Opus Bank. And the beautiful thing about capitalism is if that guy, the owner who acquires the brand, does it wrong, I will promise you we will be hired by the next company that will do it right. And we will bring them into that void. Kettleman's Bagels, some of you may remember, was a loved Portland bagel, and they were bought by Einstein's Noahs. And the very first thing Einstein's Noahs did is changed all the names to Einstein Noahs and put all of their recipes into place. And you ask yourself, did they just want to buy the leases? I mean, what was that all about? And it has failed. So there are ways to do it right and ways to do it wrong. Last thing I'll say is what we try to do when we're, you know, we have the honor of being part of that process of selling a company to a buyer is we actually try to bake into the deal terms and into the legal documents provisions that will prevent that from happening. So corporate headquarters to remain in Portland, innovation and new product to be approved by founders, hiring practices to remain in place around giving felons equal opportunity for new jobs. So we do what we can as advisors to try to bake into the deal some protection around those key attributes, but often that's not enough.
Scott, brand extension can be a challenge for any company. What are some examples of brands that have done a good job and been successful extending into new segments or markets?
You know, I think you know, extending a brand can be challenging, as we all know. I think it really comes down to a few key things. I think it's about fit, ability to leverage that brand, about the opportunity. There's some great examples of brands that have found those kind of logical adjacencies to extend brands. Keeping politics aside, I'd tell you one bad example is, you know, did anybody buy Trump steaks, Trump vodka, Trump ice?
We could work politics into
But
this.
we
There's a lot to
debated,
work
so we
with
debated
today.
this morning, are we going to work politics into it or not? So leave it to me to go there. GoTrump.com, Trump Magazine, do that. So that's one where we probably went a little too far. But I think if, you know, we've got some great examples, you know, and go to school on Nike, you know, and remember the waffle trainer, you know, you know, where, you know, again, it's about what are those logical adjacencies for the brand. And I think that's a great example. You look at a company like Amazon that's been a disruptor. as well as extending. And remember the day when we just bought a book on Amazon. So now we don't even read books, but we buy a lot of other things on there. So to build on David's point about being a disruptor with that, I think that one company I really like is Yeti coolers. Coming from that, and if you know that story, I mean, Yeti completely disrupted the cooler market, entering it at a price point that wasn't an issue. Again, getting back to price is just not. They made the best quality cooler and created a brand, and now they're by far the leading cooler company in the world. And they're extending that into logical adjacencies. And I mean, I saw the numbers that they were doing, and it's staggering. It was a little painful when I was at Coleman when they took some share from me back in the day, but they've just done a great job. I think Hydro Flask is one to keep your eye on. I think they're just
Awesome.
absolutely doing a great job. So, but again, I think each of those examples, whether they're recent or over the years, have found those logical adjacencies and have not gone kind of off the reservation, I think so.
Mike, branding and selling a luxury product is a particular challenge. How can you position yourself in a competitive market to gain your share of the available disposable income?
Like I was saying earlier, on one hand, I envy the non-luxury brands. On the other hand, the kind of avidity and passion and love that luxury brands that people choose to support is unbelievable. If you look at the Timbers Army, in our case, you don't see utilities or law firms, sorry, stole your apartment, getting tattoos, and you don't see Stoll Reeves tattoos and flags and things. And it's even though I have one right here, by the way, reduce my fee by, and so, like several of my colleagues on the panel said, it's about a relationship, it's about passion, it's about experience, and luxury brands are brands of choice. And if you can evoke and cultivate a love and a passion for a brand that people choose, but it's a tenuous covenant if you don't protect it right now. Well said.
And we were joking around before this about how I'm a New Yorker, and if you get that brand wrong and you don't protect it right, you'll hear it very clearly, and that can be extraordinarily painful and destructive.
Yeah, very much.
David, earlier this year it was announced that millennials have overtaken baby boomers as America's largest generation with 75 million. How do you market to this new generation who've grown up with a cell phone and social media? And what are they looking for when being marketed to? And what does the millennial consumer want to see from a brand?
Yeah, I think it's something that's really important for all of us to think about. And the first thing I'll say is what we find is the millennials don't want to be marketed to. There's a lot of noise out there. People are trying to message and market to people all day long everywhere. And the millennial is sort of burned out on that. I think they want to feel like they're discovering the brand. And so what we talk a lot about is, instead of marketing, is assisted discovery. And sort of really, in a very nimble way, trying to sort of allow your brand to be out there in a relevant context so that the millennial can find you and not to beat them over the head with it. Some of the ways we're doing that at Merriweather Group is through collaborations. So Pendleton, who's a loved Portland brand and client, is a 151-year-old, sixth-generation wool company. And they have a ton of authenticity, but they have a big problem, which is a key consumer group for them is aging. And the mom and dad who wear the Pendleton shirt to church and the like is getting a little long in the tooth, and the brand needs to figure out how to speak to a younger millennial consumer. And so one of the ways we've helped them do that is through aligning and doing fun, exciting collaborations with brands like Nike. So Nike comes out with a line of Pendleton Nike footwear, and suddenly, my son is seeing Pendleton in a new way and for the first time. Now, Pendleton didn't go out to my son and start telling him about Pendleton. They just found a way to get in front of him in a relevant, exciting, and kind of unexpected way. So I think it's nuanced, and collaboration is one way to do it, obviously through social media, But these millennials, again, want to feel like the brands that they're supporting, that they have an experience with these brands and that they are co-creating that experience with the brand. They're not interested in buying products. They're interested in sharing in experiences.
So, Mike, to succeed in today's competitive climate, brands need to stand for something that consumers are willing to stand behind. Those consumers can make up your community. How important is it to build and foster a community around your brand?
For us, it's absolutely critical. If you look at you see what's happening in Snapchat. The most powerful brands are brands that are defined from the ground up. It's not top down, it's not the creed, this is who we are. It's defined by the people who are loving, interacting, using it, talking about it. So if you look at what's happening in Snapchat, Harley Davidson's a great example. Such a powerful brand because their users are out there, and the most powerful marketing is people sharing their experience and becoming your emissaries and your ambassadors and turning other people on. And in our case, the crux of a successful sports enterprise is building community within a community. It's a shared experience, and these otherwise strangers coming together and high-fiving, hugging around a goal or a touchdown, and it's so powerful. And we were 1 year into the Timbers, about 5 or 6 years ago, and I was at lunch with the CEO of Leatherman, Jake Nichols. And Leatherman is a wonderful, wonderful local brand, and he said to me, I have my own army. And I said, what do you mean by that? He said, I have my own Timbers army. And he was referring to those Leatherman consumers who know every release, who know everything's going on before the company does, who's emailing, calling every day. And it was an interesting way of looking at it. I think any brand has their own army. And if you buy that premise, then the challenge is, how do you speak to that army, the people closest to your brand? And how do you leverage their passion and avidity to sort of tell your story? And at the same time, and we face this all the time, we have crazies, our Timbers Army, they're the most amazing fans in sports I've ever encountered. Yet, we can't build our business only on the crazies. How do we stay authentic, accessible, and relevant to people who may not be as engaged? And then how do you move people along that brand continuum from, I'm a casual fan, I'm a casual user, I have 1 or 2 cups of Boyd's coffee a year, and how do you move them to the, I am hooked on Boyd's and I have to have a cup every day? And in our paradigm, it's, I kind of like soccer a little bit, but I hear it's cool, and then ultimately, over time, they become the people who are getting the tattoos.
So what are you doing to get them there? How are you bridging that?
I think for us, we made the conscious we've got to have enough courage to let our fans speak and define who we are. We've got to create an environment that is open and accessible to all. When we speak about the sport, we've got to be credible with the geeks and people who love the sport, but yet informative enough. And so it's just finding that middle ground where you're open and accessible to all and authentic and credible to a spectrum of your fans.
And dive into what that fan base looks like from a demographic standpoint.
In the Timbers, it's remarkably varied. I mean, we definitely skew high on household income. We index high on the millennials. But if you the knee-jerk reaction is to think that the Timbers Army is comprised of only millennials or only, tattooed, big beard, bike driving baristas, and we certainly have our fair share. But it's much, because at the heart, it's being part of something bigger than you are, and that's at the core of any great brand. Is I feel connected to others. I feel connected to my community. I feel good about myself. I'm sharing experience. I'm getting away from, my everyday challenges. And for us, it's much more broad-based than you might think.
Scott, with 25 years in marketing, working with leading brands in sporting goods and houseware sector, you obviously have a lot of experience working with large retailers. Can you speak to the importance of developing strategic retailer relationships to help drive success for consumer brands?
Yeah, thanks. I've been fortunate to work with some great leading retailers, and for me, what I try to do to work with our teams is really move that selling process from transactional to strategic. You know, too often times it's a salesperson and a buyer, you know, working on the business that way. You know, it's critical to you know, establish more senior level relationships up and down each functional area, you know, and across the company. As I always say, you know, we're all in sales. It's not, you know, everybody's got an ownership, a piece of that to the customer. Do we have, you know, not annual promotion calendars and new product plans with customers, but do we have, you know, multi-year joint business plans in place that the customer signed off on, that we've aligned to? And then kind of getting back to what we've talked about a lot today is that the consumer. I mean, do we know that shopper that's shopping, you know, our sections in the stores better than the retailer does? I mean, some of our biggest wins over the years have come when we've presented a program based on the shopper insights of that retailer, and it doesn't matter whether I think it should be green or the buyer thinks it should be blue. It's consumer wants it in red. And it takes price, it takes everything out of the equation, but understanding those shopper insights is critical.
So Jeff, from an expansion standpoint, you've had a strong brand here in Portland. What challenges have you had expanding into other markets?
A good question. You know, I think our first challenge initially was just being pertinent in Portland. So many people had heard of us, and as I first came to Portland and joined the company, all I really did was ask a lot of questions. And what I found in talking to just consumers and customers, restaurateurs like Hoover's here locally, or Fuller's Coffee Shop, who happen to be some of our customers, was that, yeah, this is the coffee my grandmother used to drink. And that told me a couple things. Great, we've got integrity with a generation that is probably not going to be around a long time. And how do we transfer that to something more pertinent? And I think, you know, David, you touched really well on being able to get to millennials, and Mike, I think you did too. But our challenge was be pertinent here first. So we, believe it or not, I loved what the Timbers did with the billboards, and I hadn't met Mike until today. And I just said, that's really cool, it's genuine. We're going to do that and tell people locally who Boyd's is. So we started there first with some billboards, and they just said, since 1900, seriously, try our coffee. We went to a couple of people like New Seasons who embraced us and brought our coffee on. We have great respect for them. And then we said, great, now how do we get to other markets? And I think, Stephen, you asked Scott a great question about strategic customers, and we said, great, now that we know who we are, and we're starting to establish our brand a little bit here, let's find the type of customer we want and deliberately pursue them. And the first one we went after was a family-owned business, about $15 billion in revenue, called Pilot Flying J. They're out of Chattanooga, Tennessee, and they have truck stop travel centers all over the United States. And they're in the fuel business. I mean, they do $13 billion in petroleum products. And every one of their tanker trucks says, best coffee on the interstate. We said, that's our guy. We have got to appeal to them. It will plant us across the entire United States. So we just contacted them and went back with a full team and talked to them about who we are, our DNA, that we're here because of how you guys show up and the fact that they believed that coffee was the fuel for their over-the-road driver, that was the essence of getting them to a Pilot Flying J. They thought coffee was a really big deal since their inception. They were trying to attract the next generation and get a soccer mom to actually come into one of their units and buy a store. So we got real deliberate about who we wanted to pursue and for the right reasons. And I think that ended up being a really good thing for us because it established us across the entire United States in a genuine way that spoke to our brand with people who interface and touch that ultimate consumer, the person buying the coffee and drinking it, in a way that we thought was really a good reflection of our brand and who we are and our lineage and in product integrity over all these years. And from there we decided, okay, great, we've done that. We've since, gosh, I think we've been with them for 5 years now, which is great. They keep renewing their agreement with us, which is a good thing for us. But then we said, great, if that works, let's do that exact same thing and be really disruptive with how we do it. So I love the term disruption because our biggest challenge to go nationally was not customer appeal, it was internal, and being able to convince our team internally that we can do anything we want to do and to continually improve and to be innovative and to transform kind of the culture of the organization to be able to deal with growth in an efficient and productive way that was financially sound, but also that I think spoke to the essence of our brand. So we had to change our internal team and how we thought about business and how we thought about who we are in the marketplace and how that translated into our brand, then take that to key customers and expand that. So we've gone after a couple of other kind of iconic brands that have been around a long time to do their coffee. We sought out International House of Pancakes, so we were able to get their business for the entire Western United States, but they were trying to transform their brand as well. We said, great, isn't that kind of cool? We're on this similar path. So it's been, it wasn't accidental. We don't think that growth is necessarily a good thing if you're not ready for it and if it's growing into the wrong geography or with the wrong customers. So we wanted to be real clear. If we can't be pertinent in our hometown, we have no business going to Chattanooga or New York. So we wanted to do that first, but we felt good about it, and we said, now let's keep going.
All right, so Brad, we still have a little bit of time? A minute? All right, before opening it up for Q&A? I'm going to do it anyway. All right, but well, I mean, I'm not allowed to call an audible, but he can call the hook.
Yeah.
All right, so that's organic growth, leveraging distribution, iconic brand distribution. Let's work on the presumption that you've got everybody internally in sync, that you've got the management team to execute on the vision, and that you've got discipline, and that you understand your brand extraordinarily well. All right, let's take just a second. That's on the organic side. All right, so like Ron Berger, Pizza Schmitza, your strategy has been a combination of organic and acquisition, M&A. Right? Some people have as a business line M&A. Right? So maybe take a moment to talk about where M&A fits into all of this and how to execute and not screw up the brand when you're buying potentially other great brands. Maybe you run with that one.
All right. How do you acquire a great brand and not screw it up? I mean, I think that it takes, I'm going to get a little woo here. I think that one of the characteristics of great leadership is ego, and one of the worst things about great leadership is ego. You got to be sure of yourself, and you have to be driven. You got to set your alarm and get up in the morning and fill your car up with gas and drive hard. But you also need to know when to surrender and chill and let go. And I think a hallmark of great leadership is knowing when something doesn't need to be messed with. And so if you're an acquirer and you're going to spend good money, shareholders' money or stakeholders' money to buy a brand, ask yourself, what are we buying and why are we paying for it? And then do everything you can to protect that and to support that. Far too often, the opposite happens, which is, we're going to buy this company and we have all sorts of synergies and we're going to plug them into our distribution and our HR and our culture and our sales and marketing group, and it's going to be 10x and the ROI is going to be huge and I'm going to get a giant bonus. Invariably, that almost always fails. And so have the discipline to do nothing when something's working.
Okay, so even though Brad said we don't have time to do this, we're going to try to do this anyway. For anybody who's interested, do we have any questions that you want to pose to the group? Yes.
So, how important would you say name and tagline would be for the success of a business if you have? Let me start over again. How important would you say name and tagline are to the success of a business if you have a great product? If you have a bad product, you could have the greatest name, marketing, people will try you, and then they'll say never again. Just kind of like with Dave's Killer Bread, I'm sure there may have been some friends when he started the company that said, really, you want to go with Dave's Killer Bread? And then when the company became successful, Dave's Killer Bread all of a sudden was the greatest idea for a name for a company. Likewise with the cooler comparison, I've never heard of a Jedi cooler, but if you came to me and said, pick a cooler, do you want a Coleman or a Jedi? Without even knowing, I'd say Jedi. So I guess in today's day and age where people are making decisions sometimes without the touchy-feely internet, this and this and that, exactly how important is the name and the tagline to the success of a company, would you say?
I'll just, quickly, for Oregon Chai, my wife chose the name, and I remember law firms saying, well, that's a terrible name because you can't protect it. Oregon's a state, Chai's a category that doesn't make sense. She said, well, that's what it is. And, Dave's Killer Breads, same thing, right?
You got your hands full.
Oh, yeah, in the best way, but yes. So, when Dave will know this, when we were talking with, very sophisticated New York private equity investors, I had a lot of bankers say to me, you'll never, ever find anyone who will invest in that company because the name, Killer. And does that play with a mom in Minneapolis, or is it just the thing that works in Portland? My quick answer to you would be the name should be born out of an authentic passion and truth around what the brand promises and what the brand's resonance is with the key consumer. And if it comes from there, if it comes from a holistic place around the founder's passion, the tagline at Oregon Chai was Nirvana in a cup. And it wasn't focus grouped or picked by Wyden and Kennedy or the product of any sort of formal brand research. It was my wife's desire to have a consumer in Michigan who put a cup of chai to her mouth, who might never leave her hometown, let alone go to the Himalayas, for that moment to experience what it might be like to be in Nepal. And so that was the tagline. So my comment would be, try not to be kitschy or cute or overly complex with picking names and taglines. These days, I think more than ever, the consumer, again, sniffs that out. Have the name and have any sort of tagline or marketing come from the organic, deep place of resonance and truth about what the brand means in the world.
Well, you also brought up an interesting point, which is, and I think if you look at the millennial, tying this back in, you look at the millennial generation today, they're all thinking about what kind of company can I create that I can sell?
Right.
Right? And that's just a little backwards.
It's backwards.
Right? And the idea of your wife dictating that it be something that was true to the heart, true to the passion, that should be where it starts.
Absolutely. If you follow your heart, this is our experience at the Merriweather Group, for all of the businesses we're honored to work with, the money will chase you. If you chase the money, you're never going to find it. It's
totally
just true.
agree.
More questions? Yes.
This question is to Mike. Thank you. This question is to Mike. Both you and David this morning talked about the experience that consumers have with your brand and how important that is. And I think for the Timbers, you're in a unique situation because so much of that experience depends on the Timbers Army, which isn't formally a part of your brand. And I've read from time to time about issues that have arisen related to song lyrics not being family friendly, and I'm sure there are questions about their use of your brand and from a trademark point of view. And I'd just like to hear your thoughts on how you nurture that relationship that's so important to your brand and protect your brand in a way that you as an organization want it to be portrayed, while not killing the golden goose of enthusiasm for your brand?
Yeah, it's a great question. Thank you. It starts with really understanding and communicating with each other. We meet with the Timbers Army and their representatives every month. We had a game Tuesday night. I spent the first half of the game with the president of the Timbers Army, just catching up. There's understanding them and having enough trust to enfranchise them, yet not too much, right? Yeah. So they push us really hard to have a third of the stadium be general admission, which is really counter to sort of modern day sports right now. And their view was we wanted to create neighborhoods within the stadium, and we wanted to be able to interact. And it was just counter to how we would have done it. And yet we had enough sort of trust in them to abide by the decision, and consequently, it really helped shape the in-stadium experience. But you also have to draw the line. To Dave's point, sometimes consumers don't know what they want. And, getting to the point where you have your fans making decisions about what players to sign, what players not to sign, might be arguably crossing the line. So it starts with understanding, and it's also understanding and communicating and listening and building a reservoir of trust and goodwill over time when there's the inevitable disagreements, that there's enough good faith on both sides to sort of work through it. And it's never going to be perfect, but the passion is there, and if they know they have a voice, and if they know they're heard, and they know they have a platform to engage with the club, you end up working through most of the things.
More questions?
As a recovering lawyer, there's a thing called the Socratic method. You learn it in law school, and it means we can call on you if you don't raise your hand and ask a question indiscriminately. So I think we should have one more question, or I'll just randomly call on someone.
Well, there you go.
Brave. He's pointing at somebody else.
Could have gotten really ugly.
I have a question probably best answered by David included because we're trying to look at the spectrum of new products, disruptive products, well-established, older, multi-generation products. How does a brand transfer change over the years so that you don't lose what you have? Again, you're still speaking to a new generation. Is it changing product experience changes? How's that happen?
Go for it.
Great question.
Yeah.
And I'll, very honestly, one we've labored with a lot internally. And I think, we talked about trying to be innovative and having your name stand for something. But it really needs to be to that promise kept and to be genuine and authentic. And I believe you can remain genuine and authentic and keep 115 years of market integrity and be totally innovative at the same time. And for us, it's who we associate with. So our brand can't just represent, I think, who we are. We have to back that up every single day. I mean, you can destroy 100 years of market integrity overnight by being disingenuine, I think. So that's been really, really important for us. And to have that sense that we're about, once we decided that and put our flag in the sand, that everyone that we associate with, whether it be our banker, like Opus Bank, be some of our key customers, that we are aligned with them ethically, that they have the same ideas of innovation and creativity that we do, and that any new product that we choose to launch has to have all of those things baked into it. So I mentioned earlier that, and this is not a plug, it was just a big move for us to go to a pod, because Keurig, Green Mountain, with their K-Cup, have dominated. I mean, in 6 years, have become 27% of the coffee industry. The consumer changed how they wanted to drink a cup of coffee. And you think, my gosh, this has been around for centuries. People have had coffee and had it out of a cup, and now they're brewing it, one thing at a time, and oh my gosh, it's maybe not an exceptional experience, but the consumer's spoken. How do we do that and be pertinent with a new consumer and yet be true to who we say we are, right? Integrity and quality. So we said we got to be totally different. We have to hearken back to the old days that you can get a great cup of coffee. It can be environmentally sound, it can be organic, it's Rainforest Alliance, so there's this ethics all the way through the supply chain. The packaging is good, but ultimately, our brand, our promise has to be, it's a great coffee experience, no matter how you choose to have it. So for us, any new thing that we choose to do has got to have all of those components in it all the time. And we have so much internal, I don't want to say argument, but pretty much. We engage people. I've dialogued with David, who I have tremendous respect for, countless times. Are we real? Is this the real deal? Here's who we believe we are. Does it resonate? I mean, we constantly challenge other people to give us feedback, because that notion, I think David touched on it, of ego for a leader, it's the same for a company. I mean, you can, that will can be a tyranny as well, and kind of unhinge things. So we try to remain humble all the time too, while we seek to find, are we delivering that promise in everything that we do, no matter what it is, no matter how we show up, whether it's a new coffee going onto a store shelf, whether it's a new way to get distribution to customers that we've never been able to reach. It's got to encapsulate those pieces of that brand, and we have to back that up throughout the entire organization. So maybe a long answer to your question, but I think a really good one, and one that I find so few people ever ask themselves. So it ended up becoming a huge debate in our organization and external, because we got input.
Yeah, and I'll just, I huge respect for Jeff and in his leadership of coming into a historic, very, very rich, deeply authentic brand, and then interpreting that and making it relevant in the current world. And Nike's another great example of that. Everything ties back to a waffle iron and Phil Knight and innovation. It's all about making the athlete better. And if it isn't, they just don't do it. It doesn't matter if there's a huge trend, a big opportunity in the market. If it does not coexist and or come from their founding principles, it won't happen. I think that Kim, my colleague who's sitting there, is working with this challenge right now at Pendleton, how not to offend that kind of aging consumer that is very core to them, but also make the brand relevant to a more youthful consumer. And it is about tension. It is about the marketing team saying, this is our brand and we won't do anything outside of that. And the sales team say, yeah, but we need stuff we can sell. And you need that tension. You need that. And that's a good thing, right? And the product of that back and forth is probably will birth the healthier result of what actually comes into the world. And then the last thing I'll say is, we're big believers in what we call the power of and. And great companies that have been around have to be authentic and deeply rooted in their history, and they have to be entrepreneurial. Putting entrepreneurial energy purposefully into your business is critical. Google is hiring more MFAs than they are MBAs, because they understand that this idea of having really smart left brain horsepower around process and analytics and data and best practices and P&L, it's critical. You gotta dot I's and cross T's and balance your checking account. But you also need artistry as well as analytics. You need purpose and meaning as well as profits and machinery. And so it's when you can have this toggling back and forth between the artistry and the analytics, between wisdom and knowledge, between purpose and profit, that's really where you actually create major value.
Yeah, great comments.
I think we had a question halfway up with the hand over here before.
Trailblazers made a huge change yesterday in how the consumers take in their brand. So you've all talked about how consumers consume the brand, and television and radio is the biggest way sports teams usually disseminate their brand.
Yeah.
So can you talk about or comment on what the Trailblazers change made, as well as advice as executives when you make that decision? All right, now's the time we're going to make a change. Advice to other executives of how you're going to make that change and how consumers are going to take in your brand.
Yeah, for those of you who don't know, the Trailblazers yesterday unexpectedly announced the firing of 3 of their longstanding broadcasters. the two television guys combined had 45 years with the club, and clearly had become the voice and the face and one of the very most visible ambassadors of the team. And it's a gutsy decision, and as you might imagine, people get very attached. It's one of their connections. It's how the brand experience is partly defined for many people who watch the games. And you have to realize in sports, the people who actually attend the games is really a fraction of your fan base. The preponderance of people are consuming your game and your brand through social media, online, and on television, obviously. So this was a big thing. And so my first reaction was, gosh, this is tone deaf and it's crazy because people, and then I thought about it more, and if they really want to embark on a change, it's a really courageous decision. And hopefully they have enough trust and patience from their fans to see how it all plays out. But in some ways it's very courageous because they knew, I had spoken to my counterpart at the Blazers about this, they knew they were going to get huge pushback. And it's a sign of a strong brand when people are so attached, where they're up in arms about a decision like that. And I would counsel fans and observers to let's see how it plays out. Let's see what direction they go. And so in some ways it was a really gutsy, courageous decision, and I think the jury is still out for quite a while, and we'll have to see how they replace and what direction their broadcasts take.
Todd Friedman from Stoll Reeves sent me a note when he heard that news yesterday and said, "I'm contemplating filing a suit for tortious interference with drinking."
Any more questions, or we wrap it up? It's up to you. All right, well, thank you everybody for coming. I hope this was impactful, and we look forward to doing it again.
Thanks, Mike.